Good evening and welcome to We the People. In an age of terrorism and at a time when the army is increasingly used for counterinsurgency operations, is the Armed Forces Special Powers Act a legislation that the army needs to be able to operate freely, especially in conflict zones. One army general talking to NDTV even described the controversial act as a holy book. Another said it was like a bulletproof vest necessary for every soldier in conflict zones. But now it's no longer human rights activists alone who are saying that the act gives the kind of sweeping powers to the army that actually liberates it from any accountability at all. The Home Ministry has proposed a slew of amendments to the Armed Forces Special Powers Act that seek to make it more accountable. The army, however, has dug its heels in. The army chief said this past week that any attempt to dilute the provisions of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act would only be done for narrow political gains. So in an unprecedented situation where the army and the political establishment stand severely divided over this controversial act, we debate on We the People today. Has the Armed Forces Special Powers Act become part of the problem rather than part of the solution? I want to start with General Seth, if I may. As somebody who served not only in the army, sir, but as somebody who's also been the governor of Tripura and Chhattisgarh. And right. Chhattisgarh is in the news right now, right. A time of raging debate over whether to use the army in anti-Maoist operations. Right. Why, sir, is this act something that the army believes that it needs?
Now, at the very outset, let me, Bakha, tell you that your statement or some people saying the act makes army unaccountable is very far from the truth. Army stands fully accountable to all its actions. There are other provisions. Army needs a protective law to operate under these situations. You must understand, when do we call the army? We call the army when the situation has gone beyond the hands of the police and the politicians.
And the paramilitary as well.
And the paramilitary forces. The police enjoys powers under Criminal Procedure Act. If you induct any force, let it be anything other than army even, it has to be empowered to tackle that situation. And that situation needs certain protection to the people who operate. As regards their accountability, let me tell you, the Supreme Court has number of times examined this issue. While in Nagaland, in Tripura, I have faced all those things. And it has never found it ultra-virus to our constitution or impinging the fundamental rights of the people.
Who accounts for the human rights violations? And you know that these are chronicled. Who accounts for the human rights violations in insurgency-affected areas?
Right.
Where political alienation is so much part of the problem that every violation only alienates the people further.
Let me generally off the cuff rattle out certain figures. Over the last 20 years, we have had almost 1,500 human rights complaints. Of this, 97% were found to be baseless.
By whom?
By the Human Rights Commission.
The National Human
Rights Commission, and discharged. Those, wherever they have found any fault, the officers, the men, the JCOs have been ruthlessly punished under the Army Act of their own.
Okay, so you make two arguments. One, you say that, look, the army in any case doesn't enter counterinsurgency of its own volition. Right. The army would actually prefer to be left out of it. It enters because the state feels that no other mechanism works. And secondly, that there are already inbuilt provisions within the law that human rights violations can be addressed within.
Tuba.com